If you've been running into trouble uploading your beautiful children's book onto KDP, or if you want to be as prepared as possible for your upcoming uploading of your book files, whether that's your first or your 10th, then this video is for you. We'll look at the most common issues we may run into, how to fix these issues, the best practices we will want to keep in mind, and if you're also planning on uploading your beautiful book onto Ingram Spark, we will cover this as well. Hi there, I'm Eevi, an award-winning children's author and ghostwriter over on eevijones.com and the creator of Children's Book University. I create videos specifically for children's authors, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of my videos. This last week, I ran into trouble when I was publishing How to Get Your Children's Book into Any Store, my brand new workbook style guide to help us children's authors plan, track, and succeed in getting our book onto retail shelves. If you follow me on Instagram or if you receive my weekly Sunday emails, you already know all about that. Now, I have gone through this publishing process many times for myself, for my clients, as well as for publishers I work with. And I have run into trouble many times. So I knew how to troubleshoot this. Running into error messages during the uploading of our files or running into submission problems when we hit the publish button is something nearly every author runs into, especially with their very first book. I remember so clearly how nervous I was when I uploaded and published my very first book. And so it is my goal to prepare you as best as possible with this video so that you can enjoy and celebrate this moment instead of dreading it. Whether you run into these little hiccups with your first book or your third, it is my hope that you can use this video as your guide so you know exactly what to do. So this may be a bookmark-worthy video. So let's jump right in. When it comes to troubleshooting during this final step of our book creation process, we can essentially divide it into two phases. Phase 1 is before we hit the submit for publication button, and phase 2 is after. Any trouble we run into in phase 1 mostly has to do with our uploaded files, our cover sleeve, and our interior file. Any error message we receive in phase 2 after we hit the submit for publication button mostly has to do with our book's metadata, so all the information we are entering about our book. So let's look at each of these phases individually, including how to fix any issues that may come up. Errors that I categorize under phase 1 have to do with our cover sleeve file and our interior file, and they pop up within KDP right as we are uploading these files. The first issue we might encounter is how our cover sleeve is being displayed in the previewer. Here we might not even see an error message pop up, but we can see quite easily that our cover doesn't show up correctly. So in this example on the left, the uploaded file is much too large and only shows a fraction of what the correct cover should look like here on the right. This happens if our image is too large, which is often a result of using tools like Canva.com. Canva is absolutely fantastic, but it can be a bit tricky when we are exporting PDF files. So more often than not, it's a conversion and exporting problem. If that's something you have run into, I've made a whole separate video on how to properly use Canva for the creation of our cover sleeve. I've made sure to share the link in the description below. The second issue we might encounter is a thin white margin along the edges of our pages where there should be none. Here the issue is most likely that we have selected the bleed option under KDP's bleed settings, but then didn't add the required 0.125 inches bleed allowance to each of our outer edges of our pages. If we have even just one illustration that extends to any of the outer edges, all illustrations should be prepared with bleed, with that added 0.125 inches to each of the outer edges. If you need help figuring out the correct illustration size, I've got you. You can use my illustration template generator tool that I have added the link to below. That will quickly and easily add that bleed allowance for us. The third issue we might encounter in this phase is an error message that our image is outside the margins. Here the issue is that we may have created our illustrations with the necessary added bleed allowance, but then have selected the no bleed option under KDP's bleed settings. As long as this error message only pertains to the illustrations, this is often one of the easiest things to fix, because all we would have to do is simply select the bleed option so that KDP knows that our illustrations are meant to extend all the way to the outer edges. But this example screenshot here also showcases a fourth issue that we might encounter, and that is that the pages again seem much too big, just like we had with the cover earlier. If this happens, again, make sure you watch my separate video I shared earlier so you know exactly how to prevent this problem during your formatting process. And if you want to make it extra easy, feel free to use my plug-and-go formatting templates that make the formatting super easy and that ensure that our files are prepared in the correct size. The fifth issue we might encounter is an error message that our text is outside the margins, meaning our text is too close to the edge. Here we will want to go back into our illustration that is marked as incorrect and move the text further toward the center of the page, and then upload our corrected file again. And finally, the sixth issue we might encounter when it comes to our uploaded files is an embed fonts error. Some fonts, especially those purchased and downloaded from the internet, have licenses that do not allow them to be embedded. And this error message may also pop up if the settings of the software we used aren't properly set. One of the best and easiest ways I have found to prevent this from happening is to simply use Canva to add the text to each of our pages. Canva has an incredibly large selection of fonts and embeds them beautifully. Now, once we have uploaded our files onto KDP and no more error messages pop up, we have successfully passed that first phase. Errors that I categorize under phase 2 have mostly to do with our book's metadata and will pop up after we hit the Submit for Publication button. Once we hit that button, we'll see our book's status change from draft to in review. This review process can take up to 72 hours, and while it is in review, our book will be locked, so we won't be able to make any changes to it. If our book is approved and published, the status will change from draft to live, and we are all set. If, however, our current version has not been improved, two things will happen. One, the in-review status reverts back to draft status, which makes our book editable again. And two, we will also receive an email letting us know that our action is required and that our submitted book might have caused a misleading customer experience that needs to be addressed. I have received these types of emails often enough to believe that every author receives the exact same email. And it doesn't really tell us why or where exactly our submission got stuck. Instead, we get a list of potential errors. So let's take a look at each of these listed line items individually so we know what they mean and how to fix them if we find they might apply to our book. The first line item shares that unnecessary repetitive terms or phrases within title, subtitle, or series field should be avoided. This is meant to prevent something referred to as keyword stuffing. Sadly, with the rise of scamming book uploads, this requirement is something that has become quite necessary. I'm sure you've seen books on Amazon with crazy titles before, like this one right here. Going to bed, bedtime stories for toddlers, most effective children's book, picture book, gift book, toddler book, kids book, 4 to 5-year-olds for story time and bedtime, fun read. Using our title, subtitle, and series title effectively is important, including keywords we want to make sure to include in them. At the same time, they are not meant to be a full book description. So if Amazon sees lots of repetition here, it now will get flagged. To address this for my own book, I went ahead and tweaked my subtitle just a bit, and that's because it included the word book and the word store multiple times. So my title and subtitle now became How to Get Your Children's Book into Any Store, a step-by-step guide to help children's authors plan, track, and succeed in getting their books onto retail shelves. The second line item shares that unauthorized reference to other titles or authors should be avoided. Now, this pertains to mostly two areas. One, our title and subtitle, and two, our keywords we get to enter on the back end within KDP. Referencing other authors or other well-known book titles in our book's metadata may get flagged now, unless we have permission to do so. Now, many years ago, it was actually a strategy to reference other titles and specific author names in our keywords. But because Amazon wants authors to use and set up Amazon ads for their books instead, we are advised to no longer use names and titles of others in our 7 allowed keywords or key phrases. For Amazon ads, however, we are still free to do so. The third and fourth line items are enforced quite strictly, and that's that references to sales rank and references to advertisements or promotions are not permitted, whether that's on the back end in our keywords or on the cover of our book or our book's metadata. A sales rank related example would be the word best-selling. We can't put this on our cover or in our keywords. And a promotion related example would be the word free. So we wouldn't be using words like this on our cover or in our keywords. Now, there is, however, an exception for branded, well-known, and accepted titles, such as New York Times bestseller or USA Today best-selling author. These are allowed. But the reason why words like bestseller and free are not permitted is because the Amazon bestseller lists change hourly, and free promotions are temporary. So to prevent people from being misled, those terms are simply not permitted. And finally, the fifth line item shares that any unauthorized reference to a trademarked term is not permitted. This is another really strict one that we definitely want to steer clear of. And that's actually what caused my submission to be rejected at least 6 times for my new how-to book. On the back of my cover, I had included a short author bio where I mentioned that I'm the founder of Children's Book University. Now, Children's Book University is a registered trademark that has been officially registered with the United States Patent and Trademark Office. And as the owner, I can of course use it and include it in any of my materials. But in order to do so, I would have had to submit proof that I am the rightful owner. In the end, it didn't really matter, so I simply took it off, and as soon as I did, my book was approved. Figuring this out was quite a lengthy process because I believe teeny tiny trademark symbol was flagged by KDP's automated checking system, not an actual person. So when I reached out to KDP, they simply kept resending other versions of their generic rejection email because they couldn't tell me what it was that triggered the rejection. So in the end, going through each of these line items is what did the trick. So until KDP is able to provide us authors with more specific reasons as to why our book submission didn't go through, that's what we will have to do. Now, to help you get through this potentially quite nerve-wracking time, I wanted to share 4 best practices with you that will help make this process much smoother and quicker. Best practices number 1 is to remember that getting error messages is absolutely normal, whether that's our first book or our third. So when, not if, this happens, remember to take a deep breath and know that everything is figure-outable. Going into this process with this mindset will make it a breeze to get this done. Best practices number 2 is to give yourself plenty of time for this. That way you can address any issues that may come up, especially during phase 1 when we are uploading our digital files. On KDP, we can actually order physical proof copies even before we ever hit the publish button. So for best practices number 3, I encourage you to order a proof paperback copy, especially if this is your very first time. It's the printing cost of your book plus shipping, so it's fairly inexpensive. And at least here where I live, it takes less than a week to receive it in the mail. But remember, and that's a really important one, just because we were able to order a physical proof copy does not mean our book has been approved by KDP for publication. Our book only enters the actual publishing approval process once we hit that submit for publication button. So again, if we have things planned for our launch, we want to give ourselves ample time to take care of any eventualities that may pop up. Best practices number 4 is that if you wish to reach out to a service member, you can simply do so by replying to the notification email. However, wait until the status of your book has changed back to draft mode. If you reach out while it's in review mode, their response will always be the same, that they checked on our status and that it can take up to 72 hours. So their help is very limited, and that's because while the system flags our book, it doesn't specify why it did so. So don't get frustrated with the service people and instead go through each of these line items and make your changes and tweaks accordingly. Now, this video addressed possible trouble we might be running into over on KDP with our paperback. But what about our hardcover on Ingram Spark if we choose to add this format option? When our files are being returned with an error message over on Ingram Spark, 9 times out of 10 it's due to the cover sheet file, not our interior file. Why is this a pretty good guess? Well, because we will be using the exact same interior file that was already submitted and approved over on KDP, right? So it has to be the cover sheet file. Here it's often because our hardcover sleeve is a very different size. It's much larger than the size of our paperback cover. And that's because the cover sheet for a hardcover will have to be big enough so that it can physically be wrapped and glued around the cardboard. but as long as you are using the calculated size and downloadable templates from my Illustrator template generator tool, you should be good to go. And if you need even more help, remember that my Plug and Go formatting templates now also include cover templates for both our paperback and hardcover. So again, I made sure to add the link to those resources in the description below. With today's increased use of AI to help with the approval process over on KDP, books are much more easily rejected. That can be really frustrating and nerve-wracking, especially if this is our very first time publishing a children's book. So I really wanted to make a video to help and guide you through this process. I hope you found this video encouraging and helpful. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't yet. It really encourages me to keep making free videos for you just like this one. Remember, everything is figure-outable, as Marie Forleo loves to say. And it really is. Bye!